Hey everybody. Once again we're back with another TV show review. I knew this had more than just one season. The Disney Plus it's a little bit out of whack with this one because I'm reviewing the Spectacular Spider-Man show. Now, I knew it had to be at least two seasons, but Disney Plus has it roped up into one long one. So, because uh I watched it all, I might as well just combine season 1 and 2 together in this one video, which is fine. It really kind of speeds up the process because uh not right away, but as soon as I get through the comics, the Spider-Man comics, and wrap up with Spider-Verse, I'll be going right into X-Men related content. So the next TV show review that I'll be doing is the 90s X-Men story, and then uh X-Men Evolution and the Wolverine and the X-Men. Um so anyway, don't forget to leave a like, comment, share this with your friends. Try to get this video to 100 likes. If you love the Spectacular Spider-Man show. And like, do you got a favorite character out of this entire uh two season show? And man, like Josh Keaton, wonderful choice as this version of Spider-Man. Like everybody who voiced Spider-Man always brings their own take to it, but this is why it was like it was such a cool choice. When one of my favorite video games, Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, bringing in all four different people who voice Spider-Man in one form or another. Neil Patrick Harris voicing 616 Spider-Man, 90 Spider-Man, Christopher Barnes as Spider-Man Noir. You got the 70s Spider-Man and his Amazing Friends voice actor voicing Spider-Man 2099. And then you got Josh Keaton, the Spectacular Spider-Man, voicing Ultimate Spider-Man for that game. So cool. And it's like the one thing I would have loved to add, at least there's two things I would love to add with Spider-Man No Way Home. Since this is like a huge love letter to Spider-Man all around, it would have been so cool to have these four voice actors the cameo in some way in Spider-Man No Way Home. It's just Spider-Man, like just sprinkled throughout the entire film. Like you got Josh. Can you imagine if you got like Josh Keaton on like a dispatch or something, and it's like you hear his voice and you hear like Spectacular Spider-Man, or Neil Patrick Harris walking in like a coffee shop, and like Christopher Barnes like as a yeah, like just some guy on the street or something like that. Just like you get all these guys who've been a part of Spider-Man, even like Yuri Lowenthal, the more recent voice for Spider-Man in the Marvel Spider-Man game, another one of my favorite video games I ever played in my entire life. Get them involved and just like Spider-Man love all throughout. That's what would have done. But this had an incredible theme song too. Uh, it was right up there like Spider-Man, Spider-Man does whatever Spider can. Then of course you got the 90s Spider-Man theme song. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, radioactive Spider-Man. And then you got this spectacular, spectacular Spider-Man, spectacular. It's like it gets you like just hyped for the entire show. I love the art, animation design in this is very cool. Like just like a unique spin on this world. It's funny enough that unlike most other iterations of Spider-Man works, it didn't throw in any type of cameos from other heroes at all throughout this entire uh show, which I would say is disappointing. But it'll just be a nice little cool of the wider world of the Marvel universe. Like, at least, you know, either at least Cap, Iron Man, Fantastic Four, or even the street level characters like Daredevil, at least something like that, you know, just to show there's like a bigger world out there. Even like Nick Fury and Agents of Shield, it's like, you know, get them in there. But yeah, of course you got like, you know, the, you know, characters involved. Uh, of course you got. Oh, I do love the fact that, you know, this is probably the most involved in Peter's like supporting cast in the school as I ever seen in almost anything Spider-Man related. Of course, you got, you know, Harry Osborn. Gwen Stacy makes a very prominent role in this entire show. We later get Mary Jane Watson down the line. Aunt May, who still she like, you know, like a very geriatric type of lady. 1 second. Um, we got Eddie Brock. He has an impressive arc, at least somewhat. There's like at least one thing that kind of like I want to point out that I kind of like disagree with story wise, but we'll get to it. Uh, we get a little bit with Uncle Ben and more so like flashback type of things. We got Flash Thompson, which I gotta admit, this is probably like the best we get from Flash Thompson outside of maybe like the comics. This is probably the best iteration of Flash Thompson, and more of like a layered, showing how much more of a layered person he is outside of being just like just like a jock bully. And of course you got like J. Jonah Jameson, who for first time in a long while not voiced by J.K. Simmons. We got Betty Brant, or Betty, yeah, I think it was Betty Brant. Who Peter initially wanted to ask out to this dance, but it made want to interfere for some doggone reason. And then somebody like, oh, you're too old for. She's 20. I was like, oh, you're too old for him, dear. It's like, shut up, Aunt May. Of course, you got Liz Allen involved here, and you get Hobie Brown, who, for the most part, doesn't speak all that often, and often gets like interrupted. This Hobie Brown is related to the original Prowler, or at least he is the original Prowler, if I remember correctly. It's just different takes on it. They got Silver Sable in here, and they got Silver Sable related to Silvermane, who shows up in the second season. Of course, main continuity, she's not related to Silvermane just because they had silver in their titles. Of course, like you got the villains. You got Doc Ock, Green Goblin, which is a cool version of the Green Goblin here. Electro, Vulture, Lizard, Shocker, Sandman, Rhino, Chameleon, Mysterio, Hammerhead. We get Tombstone, aka the Big Man, who is like the overall bad guy in season 1. Like I said, it was Silvermane. We get Black Cat, and eventually Venom. Oh, and Kraven the Hunter, and the Tinkerer, and Molten Man. So they utilize, just because they have 2 seasons, they utilize these 2 seasons to its full effect. I am very impressed. Anywho, so this is like set maybe like at the most a year after Peter got his powers and he lost Uncle Ben. And of course, You know the deal. You know, him and Aunt May is struggling financially. She's keeping it from him, but even though he already knows, so he's trying to figure out a way to, like, you know, earn money so he can help Aunt May out with the bills. So he's working under the tutelage of him and Gwen, working under the tutelage of Dr. Kirk Connors. We get the lizard in here too, yes. And of course, in this version, Eddie Brock. Normally, Eddie Brock started out as like very, just like in like a '90s TV show, because this is where a lot of us knew Eddie Brock from outside of the comics, and he's been played, you know, adversary to Peter Parker before he got the Venom suit. In this version, both of their parents were friends, and they both died on a plane crash. So they just, you know, grew up with each other, and, you know, being slightly older, you know, Eddie always looked out for Peter, keeping most of the bullies off his back. They call each other bro, and so they kind of like were like brothers. I kind of like that dynamic. It is definitely a different take, but I don't know. It's just when it eventually deteriorates, I have misgivings on how that led to that. Because I don't want to say it didn't seem natural. It just seems like we got to get to the antagonistic part, so let's kind of snap it up a little bit. Gwen Stacy in this, I want to start off with her. She typically in the comics, he's played as like the popular, very attractive girl that Peter goes to school with and becomes starts a relationship with his very first girlfriend. Here she comes across more like the dorky girl next door kind of thing, and I like it in a way, but it's like, I don't know, this is, like I said, it's a different take on Gwen Stacy, because Gwen Stacy isn't known to be like some kind of genius level intellect or anything like that. It's a very average intellect. She's not an idiot, but she's not like as brainy as Peter Parker. So she plays off like very awkward sometimes. We get like Captain Stacy in this too. He plays like a you know, some pretty good role in this, outside of him just dying in the comics. Which, once again, another person that could easily be Spider-Man's Commissioner Gordon, just like, you know, Watanabe in the game, or Jean DeWolf, or Terry Lee. Yeah, a plethora of cool cops that work alongside with Spider-Man. And obviously, you know, get a hint after a while, because he is a detective. And speaking of Jean DeWolf, you got a cop here that shows up every once in a while. This girl, and she's named Jean DeWolf, but she doesn't get much speaking lines. She doesn't play any major part, but it's cool you kind of like throw that in there. But it's clearly that after a certain point, Captain Stacy kind of hints that he knows Peter Parker's Spider-Man, but like Commissioner Gordon, where more often than not we get certain iterations of dialogue that kind of hit that Commissioner Gordon already knows, because he is a detective. It's like, if you are skilled in investigating in any way, you should be able to, you know, if you focus enough, you should be able to dig deep and figure out who is Batman and who is Spider-Man. So they go to Midtown High, and Harry Osborn in this. I like this variation of Harry Osborn's very play on like they kind of link, like they kind of touched on kind of like, because they got this, he takes this goblin green, this experimental formula, goblin formula essentially, to, it's pretty much like a steroid. But there's a time in the comics where Harry Osborn dealt with drug addiction. It was very, heavy stuff, and something that I think it was in the late 70s, around like drug craze and everything like that. I gotta look it up because it's probably cool for a comic book review. Maybe not this year, at some point in the future, where you're diving into the story of Harry Osborn and his drug addiction. And it kind of play on that in a way. Oh, they always do that with like most iterations. Well, not most. So it's like it's just a goblin formula. They don't really like point out like, oh, this is actual real drugs he's dealing with, but kind of lean it more to that than anything else outside of the comics, because he didn't do that with the 90s Spider-Man TV show like that. But this is kind of like a steroid in a way. It was like because he starts out like one of the like kind of the geek crowd with Peter and Gwen Stacy, and like them he's kind of mocked. There's some iterations where he's like the popular one that chooses to hang out with Peter, like in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. But there are other times when he, or even like the TV show that I reviewed, the MTV Spider-Man, he's played as one of the popular ones. I like that version of Harry Osborn probably like the most. But here you see him like, so because Norman Osborn is probably the worst fathers in pop culture history, where he doesn't make time for his son. He doesn't talk about how he doesn't even give him any positive reinforcement or encouragement or anything like that. And it's like he's telling like to man up and like take what you need, all this very negative stuff you feed into your kid's head. So just to prove to him, or just getting some admiration, he has daddy issues, severe daddy issues. So he takes his formula, pretty much like steroid, and trying to be like the most popular kid, get the hottest girl, and go out into sports, and you just acquire, and then using his money to feed the narrative, like trying to buy popularity. And obviously it goes pear-shaped, but it's just his arc is like speaks to probably a lot of kids who under that peer pressure or not being heard at home, that kind of thing. So I'm impressed with his arc overall in the show. But Peter, along the way, he eventually gets a job at the Daily Bugle for taking pictures of Spider-Man. But he comes along, dealing with like the Enforcers, which two of them turn out to be like, turn into Shocker, and then others like Mysterio and Sandman and Rhino, all that other stuff. And then he eventually figures out that there's this goon who's, he doesn't know that he, this big man Tombstone is employing, he's getting like help from Norman Osborn in creating supervillains, essentially trying to keep, his overall plan is, because he has Hammerhead as like his right hand, and who says like Hammerhead has to be like in the 40s to make him work, because the whole mobster Goodfellas kind of thing he got going on, you can still play to that in modern day. He's just a very well dressed man with well, he said titanium steel thing on his head, but in most cases it's like adamantium. But anyway, Tombstone essentially, because it's kind of like the Kingpin situation with Wesley, where it's like, you know, you don't say his name, you know, you uh you call him the Kingpin. Is the same thing here, where it's like, I I imagine it's like the same thing. I'm pretty sure the writers of Daredevil probably had, maybe not this show, but most iterations of like crime bosses, where it's like you don't say his name kind of situation to trying to keep the anonymity. Can't even say it. Keep him anonymous. Uh, uh. So his plan is to keep Spider-Man distracted while he's doing his, you know, normal uh function as a crime boss. He uh gets people to he convinces people, or at least has Hammerhead convinces people to go through these as a test subject in Norman Osborn's lab, who he has Octavius as an employee. We'll get to him in a second. Where it's like, okay, we'll make supervillains to distract Spider-Man to, like, you know, feed his little superhero antics and everything like that. But while he's distracted dealing with something like Sandman or Lizard or Rhino, I can still do my normal criminal activity that's not on that level of superhero notice. But obviously it doesn't work. This version of Octavius is, you know, definitely unique, where he's kind of like very nebbish type of character, kind of spineless in a way. And of course he had these, like, you know, the arms, very reminiscent to because they took some inspiration from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man stuff here, even with like those little like tiny appendages on microscopic appendages on Peter's fingers to help him crawl along walls. And this Octavius scene where he has the arms fused to his spine, very reminiscent to Spider-Man 2. And of course, Doc Arms like mess with his brain, so now he is like, you know, seeking revenge against Osborn. Same thing with the Vulture, because just like in the '90s shows, like commenting about how old he is and out of date and everything like that. So, but I think this, well, the game also, and Homecoming, Spectacular Spider-Man, and the Marvel Spider-Man game are like the best variations of the Vulture, because it's tech that they're utilizing to fly, and other variations make it seem like he's wearing like a normal kind of skin tight suit thing. But there's actual, you know, propulsions going on to keep him uplift. Um and all the while, like, you know, Pete struggling with, like, you know, social life. He's trying to, like, you know, hook up with Liz Allen, but, you know, she in a way has a kind of an arc too, because like this show, unlike most other shows that I've been like reviewing so far, Spider-Man related, has never really put that much focus on, like, you know, the supporting characters like that, unless they're, you know, something involved with like particular hero or villain. But like Liz Allen in this variation is related, has a brother who will turn into the Molten Man, another Spider-Man villain. Which, by the way, Molten Man, Hydra Man, these, you know, villains that need to be spotlighted in the movies at some point. But the Molten Man isn't really related to Liz Allen. This is just this show's own take on the Molten Man. But Liz Allen eventually falls for Peter. But of course, Peter going off to do his Spider-Man thing, well, under the guise of sometimes under the guise of taking Daily Bugle pictures, uh causes that relationship to deteriorate, while at the same time he actually has feelings for Gwen Stacy eventually, especially after she gave him a kiss on New Year's. Well, no, New Year's. He kissed Liz Allen on New Year's, but she kisses, thanks to the encouragement of Mary Jane, convinces Gwen to open up about her true feelings for Peter, and they do share a kiss one day. Which is probably the one thing I have against Peter in this, where it's like, dude, it's like, man up and acknowledge that you have feelings, because for Gwen Stacy, especially on Valentine's Day one time where Liz is expecting a kiss, he leans over past her to say like, "I'll be back, Gwen," and it's like, dude, who's that absent-minded like that? And it's like smart as you are, you didn't get a clue on that one. It's like, no one's that clueless, realistically. And I thought, I was like, wow, that was so dumb on his part. Oh, and I love this, this scene where these, crime bosses, Octavius Silvermane and Tombstone, are having like a powwow at this, opera theater in this private quarters, trying to discuss business. And of course, thanks to Hammerhead trying to become the next big man and try to oust Tombstone, you hear all this opera music playing as these three are fighting, with Spider-Man trying to deal with all of them. And it's kind of like that song, well, not kind of like, it's definitely was playing one of the opera songs that, if you watch my review on the 2004 Punisher Thomas Jane, where he fighting the Russian and he hits him with that, the toilet and everything like that, while the neighbors are playing that same opera music, they playing this. It's like, it's just like, you hear nothing but that, and just focus on the fight. And it's like things like, there's moments like that where it's like, man, they could have gotten like some kind of award for some of these episodes, especially the episode Intervention, which I'll get to soon. But yet this moment with we'll start with like getting into with Eddie Brock, where well, before we get into that, I want to point out, it's like during the first interaction with the Shocker, it was moments like that where he actually gets some words of wisdom from these guys that kind of help his personal life, where it's like, where like Shocker points out, I'm always good to my word. If you're not a man in your word, you're not nothing. And it's like, little tidbits of advice from technically his elders in a way, even though they're bad guys. Doesn't mean that they haven't lived and learned something along the way, so that eventually learned that he will set aside whatever funds he get from the Bugle. 10% will go towards like a new camera, but everything else will go towards and made to help with the bills. And I thought that was like a very well done moment of a character growth for Peter. But Eddie Brock, like I said, they're supposed to be bros and they get along. Things, the moment when it takes a turn is when like they think Peter is like running away when Connors is turning into the Lizard, but they see that he managed to grab pictures of Spider-Man and Lizard fighting, and it's like, oh, you're not going to work for us anymore because we can't trust you because you decided to profit off our pain, kind of situation. Of course, Gwen, and then eventually the Connors forgave Peter, but Brock just like I said, he said he was willing to let the one go, but it doesn't seem like he was going to. It's like I said, they seem like they're rushing the antagonistic relationship these two normally have in all iterations of Spider-Man lore, and it's like and it's like it's like there's another moment where it's like I forgot where it was, where it's like he was doing something else, and it's like that really kind of like, okay, I'm done with you. I'm done with you now. But it was like, okay, it was handled way too quickly. And I kind of wish that they put a little more time into the deterioration of that relationship. Whereas, like, yeah, show a little bit more of that forgiveness. And I don't know. It's just like we don't spend enough time with a positive relationship. I would say that if they would have spent at least 90% of season 1 with a good relationship, where the last 10 or 5% it shifting into a negative light for the first time, and then by beginning of season 2 where like they're trying to pass things up, but Peter steady messing up, where like a big conflict kind of be like the of season 2 be like the big like final straw for Eddie. I think like the 90s Spider-Man kind of handled it better, where it's like I don't think I think if you just kept them as antagonistic or rivals in the first place, then like in the 90s TV show, I think it would have played like a lot better than, because this is like one of the things I did not agree with Eddie Brock in this. Because like there's more to, like, because if you know Eddie Brock lore, it isn't just he got an antagonistic thing against Peter as a rival of like the Daily Bugle. In most cases, is the fact that he had a troubled life at with his father. In the comics, he at one point had cancer, which the symbiote eventually cured. His girlfriend left him. It's like life overall just crapped all over this guy, and it's just like everything just just hit him too hard all at once, which led to him being the way he was back in the 90s and early 2000s, and the symbiote feeding off of that. Here is handled too quickly. When the just like in the 90s, the piece of the black symbiote got attached to John Jameson's shuttle, crash lands to Earth. Connors was studying it, but Black Cat tried to break in, trying to steal it, but fighting Spider-Man, the thing gets out, attaches itself to Peter, and now he got the black suit. And then eventually, of course, that started feeding off of Peter's negative emotions, and of course, at the same time, while dealing with the Sinister Six, Aunt May has a heart attack. Like I said, she's just like so feeble, like ugh. And then of course, one time when Peter's trying to get some rest, the suit essentially wearing him decides to combat the Sinister Six and take him out very like this goes to show like how lethal Spider-Man can be when he's taking things to a very serious level. It's very rare when you see like Spider-Man going full force on something, where he's literally about to take one of Doc Ock's arms and about to stab him with it. If he didn't wasn't stopped by Captain Stacy. And then after he finds out about Aunt May, he just like pushes people away and everything like that because he can't pay for the hospital bills and all of this stuff. Which, by the way, they didn't really bring up anymore. And I'm not sure if Aunt May is dating her said doctor, because he's like definitely like hanging around too often. Like, I'm just checking out my favorite patient. I'm like, how often do you check on your patients like that and making house calls? Anyway, and this is where like Flash Thompson really shines, is when he sees how Peter is behaving against his friends and people he made friends with that was in his social circle. One day is like Peter coming into like the hospital to check on his aunt. He gets stopped by Flash, saying like, like how stupid he's being, because as smart as you are, you can't tell when your friends are trying to help you. And the line dialogue was very good, as like it shows like the level of maturity Flash has at that moment. And it was so jarring to Peter when he just comes like, oh my god, if Flash Thompson is making sense, I know something's gotta be wrong. It's like, I love that bit of dialogue, because it's like having your childhood bully having to sit you down to chastise you for your misgivings that you've been doing. And it's like, okay, like what the heck is going on here? And it's like, I love the title being Intervention, because he essentially is like intoxicated by this power he has from the suit, but the suit overplay its hand in a way where it's thinking for Peter, and it's like, I don't need them. I don't need Gwen. I don't need Harry. I don't need Aunt May. Those are not my thoughts. And so he inside his own head, where the suit is trying to convince him that everybody's turned against you. You need me, and I'll be your partner. And then Uncle Ben shows up, and Peter's always been Peter's North Star in his conscience and some subconscious as well, where Ben shows Peter all the good he's done, and all the people who you think you're alone, but you're not alone. You have your friends at school. You have Gwen. You have Mary Jane. You have Harry. You got the people at the Bugle. You have Aunt May. You have these people that always had your back when you needed them. And so, thanks to that push, Peter is able to fight back against. That's why I think this episode should have won some kind of award or something. This is one of the best. I think this episode stood out among all the other episodes in the entire series, and I think a lot of people will agree. This was so well done, well acted, and like the animations, is great as well. One moment is Christmas time, and like you actually see like the cold air flowing through people's mouths, like look like actual cold breath, and that was very good animation. But Peter fought back against this thing, gets off, takes off the suit, goes back to Connor's lab, and decides to freeze this thing. Of course, you beat symbiotes by fire and sonics. Of course, he doesn't know that. And of course, Brock sees this and like, oh my god, like, thank you, you bring this back, and I can get my job back at this with Connors and everything like that, because he was kind of on their grant to keep him in school and everything like that. But the symbiote feeds off his negative emotion, because Peter didn't take the time to speak with Brock about this situation. uh the symbiote turns into Venom, and Venom goes off and tormenting Peter because now he knows who Peter Parker is, and eventually outs him, just like Spider-Man Far From Home outs Peter as Spider-Man. And of course, he's denying it and everything like that, but people are hounding him, and every time he gets into it with Venom, Venom was constantly trying to take off his doggone mask, and of course, eventually, like Peter beat him, but also thanks to Flash Thompson, where because there's always been like a thing it was like a thing in the comics where early in Spider-Man comics, that's where like the 90s Spider-Man TV show had like an episode with, you know, Flash Thompson and like a Spider-Man get up, and it was like a whole adventure, mini adventure with that in the comics back in the day. But Flash Thompson dressed as Spider-Man, essentially of convincing people that anybody could wear the Spider-Man costume, doesn't prove anything. So Brock is stopped, and people were kind of debunking and just very, I want to say it's like very easily forgettable, but it's like y'all kind of like look at the very least, take a closer look at Peter's, you know, kind of like behavior, because if somebody was convinced to being Batman, you'll do everything you can to like try to not appear doing something suspicious, like running off somewhere, and you know, all of a sudden kind of situation. Then of course you got Green Goblin, who he's causing just utter devastation, who is responsible for creating Doc Ock, and like, oh my god, you know, I love because he's voiced by Steve Blum, one of my favorite voice actors, who I got a picture of with at C2E2 last year. Definitely a big deal for me because like it's like, because I took a picture of him and he got, you know, he signed a picture of Wolverine, so I got an autograph thing because he voiced Wolverine a lot, and it's like, oh my god, Wolverine knows my name. But yeah, so he makes, you know, does a great job as a Green Goblin, and so he trying to do his big plan, and of course Peter is spending a lot of time trying to figure out. Well, eventually he thought like, oh, Harry's was the Green Goblin, and for a hot minute Harry goes off to Europe, kind of like in the game. Oh, he's off on Europe and trying to get better, but it was all a ploy by Norman Osborn, who is the actual Green Goblin in this, because the Green Goblin started out to be Norman Osborn. Harry for a while took up the mantle, but eventually kind of circled back to Norman being like the standard Green Goblin. And of course, to show that, oh, you know, just to avoid suspicion of him, he hires the Chameleon to play as him on a day-to-day stuff, so that way he can avoid suspicion, which is very clever. But eventually he stopped, supposedly killed, but not really. He's in hiding. But of course, Harry got to play the same trope. Harry blames Spider-Man, doesn't like him because he killed his father, that kind of thing. Eventually, Peter and Gwen does form like a pretty cool, like a nicely paced relationship, from friend to romantic interest to an actual relationship. And of course, we all know it just had like a third season. I imagine they have to get into the whole death of Gwen Stacy thing So Peter and MJ, who also has like a pretty cool connection as well, they have to go into that relationship. Sandman, I gotta speak on about Sandman before we wrap up. Sandman, despite him, trying to commit crimes to get like, score some cash and everything like that, it was kind of fast in this episode, but I kind of wish we got some moments seated early on where Sandman did like a very heroic thing where he was hired by Hammerhead to sink this oil tanker so Hammerhead's men could plunder what they can from it, but Sandman didn't want to have anybody killed. He even like points out like everybody off the ship before he tries to attack it. But then Spider-Man shows up. Of course, Spider-Man did had a moment in a different episode where it's like, with all your power, Marco, you could be a big help to the city. Of course, Sandman wasn't trying to hear it at that time, but why all of a sudden that you trying to spring this, you don't spring this up on like Mysterio or Shocker or anybody else. Like, why Flint Marco? They never explain a reason why he had this kind of dialogue with Flint Marco. Like, what made him so uniquely special above Rhino or Shocker to have these kind of words? Like, you could be like a good asset or anything like that. It's like maybe other than maybe Black Cat, I think it was the only other one, who, by the way, had like a moment, like an arc too, where she had like a father in prison, but in this iteration, the father is the guy who killed Uncle Ben, but that is just uniquely tailor-made for this particular show. In other iterations, there was a girl that Ben Reilly was hooking up with early 2000s, I guess, but Peter Parker thought he was a clone. He was going by Ben Reilly, or was it actual Ben Reilly? I can't recall. And he was messing around with this girl who was also a photographer for the Bugle, and he was working at a diner, and she was the daughter of the man who killed Uncle Ben. Here is Black Cat, and it's like, I think not many people knew it back then, but if you watch the 90s show, you know that Felicia Hardy's father was a well-respected thief and very good at his job. He wasn't no common street mugger. Yeah, like I said, they took some liberties, but the liberties I did not agree with. But he's trying to kind of force drama between Black Cat and Spider-Man, where Spider-Man, despite her dad helping him out, trying to wrangle in all these criminals who's trying to attempt a prison break, he was like, don't think this makes us even. And it's like, because Felicia doesn't know like why Spider-Man has an in for her father. Never fully explained it to her, but it's like, some might like it, but it's just like, this seems forced, and I don't think you need it. You could have had it without the whole Felicia Hardy component to it being related to the guys, so you can force a drama between these two characters. But like I said, like, the Sandman thing, that's like, you could have, like, maybe at the very least it would have worked well if you seeded the whole thing early on, bit by bit, and so that way it finally hits home and be more impactful when Sandman finally does some heroic stuff and saving a bunch of people from like an impact of a blast from the explosion of the boat. And of course, you get that scene where, like, Sandman appears on the beach and he's disappearing in a cloud of sand, very reminiscent to Spider-Man 3, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, where Marco disappeared in like a very smooth, graceful disappearance of sand. Uh, uh, so yeah, I mean, like, the show is very good, very very good. Um, I'm missing anything? Oh, I like the way he dealt with like Rhino, very utilizing his brains. You love to see Spider-Man utilizing his brains when he's dealing with villains, like Rhino, for example. You realizing Rhino's suit in most cases kind of like almost skin tight. It's tech in some sense. Here's some kind of like hardened foam or something. I can't recall the scientific thing component to it, but this hide, essentially, he can't, because in Rhino stories, whatever suit he's wearing, he just cannot get out of. And most of his, which, by the way, if you make a Spider-Man comic, maybe trying to lean in to make it a Rhino-centered story. It's like, play towards, because like Batman, Spider-Man has an impressive rogues gallery, and you focus on too often Green Goblin or Kingpin, it's like, or Carnage or Venom. It's like, Venom's not a bad guy anymore, but you play to the same beats all the time, and it's like, you could, if you put in the effort, you can make a cool Rhino story, center story, with Spider-Man dealing with him. And he can't get out of the suit in majority of the iterations of him, and that's his ultimate goal, is trying to get out of the suit so he can live a normal life. Here he figures out how to beat Rhino, because as he's perspiring, there's no other way for the pores to release the sweat, so all that is coming out through his face is the only source. So he constantly has to hydrate himself in order to keep moving. So he managed to get him underground and utilizing the steam from the pipes to cause him to, like, perspire more and pass out. And that's how he eventually figured out about, like, the big man has been controlling and manipulating this whole entire thing. And like the moment when he finally confronts Tombstone, and Tombstone just mops the floor with Spider-Man, because Tombstone is very strong and very durable skin, kind of like Luke Cage in a way, and just like, throw hands to Spider-Man and just like, just, because he was underestimating, didn't expect Tombstone to have like power, so he thought he dealing with a normal mobster and just getting his butt handed to him. It's kind of cool moment. What else am I missing? Yeah, a bit with Miles Warren, because you can tell, like, if this was a third season, he would be like, he's already dabbling in it, but pretty soon it would have kind of grown into the whole Clone Saga story point if it had like a third season. But Kraven is on a hunt to hunt down Spider-Man for his next big game, for like a new prey, and he has Warren test out this formula to enhance his abilities, based on certain animal predators, like a lion, a tiger, and like a wolf or something like that. So he pretty much essentially turns to like a cat man, or wolf cat man kind of thing, and he just like that. And of course, it's cool, but Kraven just should have like the animal instincts, and yes, above average kind of strength and speed and agility, but he doesn't need to be like a werewolf type of individual. I think that's my pushing it a bit. But that was cool. You get a little bit with Calypso, his little Calypso. Of course, unlike the 90s Spider-Man show where she's befriends, Spider-Man has always been his ally. Here, she's like all on board with his hunting of another person. But she don't got much of an arc in this. Speaking of which, here you finally see Harry Osborn's mom, but she doesn't have any speaking lines. She is there a few times, and she just come across like she's just dead inside. Right? She doesn't even acknowledge even her own son. She just like there eating her food or passing by. It's like, wow, it's like you're a know nothing character. You just should not even be here at all. That's you should if you're gonna have for the first time that I can remember Harry Osborn's mom involved in something, give her something to do. Why do you even have her if she's not playing a significant part in this entire show? It's just like, that boggles the mind to me. I think that's probably the most offensive part out of the entire show. Like, wow, that was like, whoa, that was so like egregious. But yeah, I think like Intervention is probably my favorite episode in the entire show. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, Gangland is pretty good. But yeah, I mean, all in all, this is like a very stellar show. Aside from a few bits that kind of felt rushed in a way, and the whole thing with you know, Harry Osborn's mom, it seems like, you know, it's like know nothing of a character out of there's been other know nothing kind of characters, pointless characters I've seen in other stuff. I just can't remember off the top of my head. But when I saw her, I was like, wow, that is a know nothing character. Why do you even have her? But anyway, if you're watching this on YouTube, let me know what you think of Spider-Man. This is the Spectacular Spider-Man show. Which one was your favorite episode? Let's try to get this video to 100 likes. Share this with your friends. Check out my Patreon where you can check out the very cheap tier list where you can choose a particular movie or discussion or TV show you want me to check out and review and give my thoughts on it. Check out my Patreon, patreon.com/talkativecarl. Links are all in the description. As well, we're getting close to our 400 subscriber goal. Once we reach there, I will be doing my Hot Ones challenge video as a milestone, so I can I'll buy like the hot sauces and try out on some chicken wings, and you know, answer whatever questions you guys might have, either live or saved, and I'll just, you know, read it and answer it while trying out all these different level of hot sauces as like a celebration. Let's try to get to the 400 subscribers, guys. Share this with your friends. Let's try to get the subscriber count up. That'd be great. And I really want to do this, so let's try to get those numbers up. And yeah, I got one more review for today. Then I'll be streaming a little bit of Forspoken and maybe some Fire Emblem. We'll see. Probably just gonna be one thing because I already, you know, going along. I got one Spider-Man comic to review, Spider-Man 2099, the origin story, and I'll be doing that. Then the next comic book that I'll be reviewing is Spider-Gwen universe and her origin story. That'll be the next one I'll be that's the comic next I'll be reviewing. So anyway, I'll see you guys in a little bit. Take care, and yeah, like I said, Leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of the show. See you in a minute.